Hi, my name is Dean Kurpjuweit. I'm the pastor of Next Christian Community in St. Albert, Alberta. Ken and I first met in crisis, and it was a crisis that was both his and mine and a bunch of other people's to share. I'd been in ministry for about 2 years at this point when the church that I was an associate pastor in was imploding. And our recently minted district superintendent, who hadn't been on the job very long, walked into a spiritual and relational war zone, and in our great Canadian tradition, decided to play peacekeeper. After a particularly difficult meeting, I became quite emotional. And for me, to get quite emotional is to actually show emotion. And in this case, I was showing a lot of it. And I walked downstairs into my office. Ken followed me there to find me crying in my office. He didn't say much. Instead, he hugged me. I don't hug anyone other than my wife and my daughters. It's just kind of a rule that us German folk have been born with, and instilled. But in this case, he hugged me. And looking back on that incident a few years later, I recognize how profound a simple act can be. The church was about 1,200 at the time, and the carnage was mounting, the meeting was ugly, and yet Ken took time for one person. And as much as we like to think in groups, and as pastors we like to think in big groups, the bigger the group, that tends to be the happier we are with the event. In that moment, Ken instilled in me a basic truth of ministry. Don't just see the crowd, see one person. Take time to care for the one. A number of months later, said church was without any senior staff. I don't mean senior pastor, I mean senior staff. And they had all left, resulting in me being placed, at least temporarily, in charge. And I recall feeling not too bad about myself at that moment. True, the church was still shaky at best, and I had made a couple of horrific decisions that probably should have cratered the whole thing. But overall, the church and staff was stabilizing and things were moving forward, and I thought, you know what? I'm doing a pretty good job in this temporary lead role. Perhaps I should, strengthen my resume up, send an email to Keith Taylor letting him know he shouldn't be too comfortable there. I'm on my way. It was about this time that Ken came to see me. I'm not sure if he had other meetings in town, but he definitely came to see me. He said that he had some hard things to tell me. Those were the exact words. And he ever. The man kind of unloaded on me. And he pointed out, again, his words, every rough edge that I had. Not once out of meanness, but of a desire to see me grow. I recall thinking, if this is the truth in love thing, when does the love part come out? But the whole thing was quite loving. In that conversation, part of me was transformed. Ken pointed out rough edges that needed to be smoothed for me to become the kind of pastor, leader, man, and follower of Jesus that I believe God expected me to become. The work of the Holy Spirit sanctifies us, but sometimes God uses a person in your life to tell you where you need to submit to his work. That's what Ken did. Lastly, Ken was transformational in my ministry life. He trusted me to plant a church in St. Albert. He was willing to risk what we were doing, although unique and a little different, a little off the beaten track at the time. And I think he knew there'd likely be some pushback, which there was. But he said, I think you're going to produce kingdom fruit. And we have. A few years later, I know a couple of things. If Ken didn't get out in front of that church plant, it wouldn't have happened. It wouldn't have been good enough for him to come alongside or get behind. He got out front, and that's why it happened. Second of all, if I wouldn't have been trusted to lead in this capacity, I don't think I would have been in ministry. It's what God designed me to do. And Ken recognized that and blessed it and affirmed it when many others wouldn't. And because of that, we believe that Jesus and his kingdom has been expanded in our community because of this church. As we all know, God is bigger than any one person. But sometimes God uses one person to change you. For me, that person is Ken Driedger.